I'm Neil Dubord, Chief of the Delta Police Department. This week on our show...
1033?
Alpha 37, go through the only doors.
Copy 1033.
We have an officer who has been stabbed here. We need an ambulance, code 3.
Copy, officer stabbed, code 3 for PS.
Bend, don't break. This is a Delta Police podcast.
Hear more about how police officers strengthen their resiliency through the power of story.
Let's start off a little bit. I'd like to be able to start today with a few thank yous. First, I want to be able to thank our listeners and the people that have downloaded the Bend Don't Break from iTunes and Google Play. We've received so many emails and comments from our first responders. It's really inspiring and, to be frank, quite humbling to see the 5-star ratings that you're giving us. As you know, this started from an idea from Aaron Hill to help reduce sort of the stigma that we were feeling for mental health and wellness in the Delta Police Department. And it spread to many listeners across North America. So thank you for your comments. Thank you for your emails and the ratings that are coming in. We're truly being able to remove the loneliness of the I that we see in illness and replacing it with the we as the Delta Police Department and first responders overall in wellness. And really that's what we're here to be able to speak about, is the wellness. So secondly, I want to be able to thank our team here at the DPD. They remain committed to the project and producing a great show. And it doesn't come without a ton of work that happens in the background. It's hard to be able to find the right individuals to be able to provide their stories. And so we can all learn, grow, and ultimately ensure we can move from what I would call bitter to better. Finally, if you have a story of resilience you would like to share on our show, please contact us either by going to our Delta Police website and seeing where the Bend Don't Break is, or by emailing us at media@deltapolice.ca. And, continue to send us your feedback. That's really inspiring for us, and it continues to drive us forward to make sure that we produce a good program for you. So I'm super excited to be able to have Lane Douglas Hunt with us here today for our podcast. And she really, truly has an amazing story that you won't want to miss. And we've just heard sort of the original dispatch tape that came in when Lane was involved in this particular instance in Victoria. She's a police officer in the city of Victoria, which is located on Vancouver Island in British Columbia. And she's going to help us sort of understand an event that she went through, the post-traumatic stress that came with it, but really the post-traumatic growth that also came with it, learning from this event and how she could reduce some of that stress that came along with it. Lane has sort of an amazing career. She's a bomb tech. She was one of the first, and I think the only one, member of the ERT team, a lady in the ERT team for the Greater Victoria area, and has some tremendous experience. So I am thrilled to be able to have you here and have you be able to talk about this. So thank you to Aaron for being able to find you, and thank you for you to agreeing.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to ask. I'm all about this and sharing stories and peer-to-peer support. So I'm honored to be here.
It's going to be really cool. So tell me what you had for breakfast this morning, though.
I eat the same thing for breakfast every day.
That's too easy.
I know. Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt with a scoop of protein powder and some granola. So.
Well, you obviously look in very good shape.
Thank you.
And you're committed to fitness. And I know that you certainly competed in the Toffus Cup Live in 2011, and you were a winner of that particular event in the World Police Fire Games. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yes, and I know that certainly you remain very fit as you do your bomb training, I would imagine.
Yeah, you know what? Just the job. My fitness has always been important to me. It's, as a cop, you want to train to be an useful human being. People are calling us to help them, and you're going to some pretty dynamic scenes with a partner, and kind of my worst fear is not being able to handle myself physically for either the person who calls us or for my partner who needs me. So that's always been a very strong motivator for me to stay in good shape. That, and things happen and it can save your life. So I've always been kind of highly motivated to stay in good shape.
What kind of movies do you like to watch? What's your favorite movie?
Oh, and you told me you were going to ask me this, and I've been sitting here this whole time stressing out. I don't have a favorite movie.
Oh, come on.
No, I don't.
Netflix? What's your guilty pleasure?
You know what?
Dessert?
I watched the whole Bosch series on Prime because I read all the books and I found they did an excellent job with that. That's on Amazon Prime's
LAPD Homicide Detective.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Did
Yes.
you read the books?
I've seen some of them. I haven't read them.
Read all 25 of them, and so I kind of nerded out on that series when it came out. So yeah, I don't sit and watch a ton of movies. I don't have a great back, so it's hard for me to sit for 2 hours and watch a movie. But
I get it.
yeah.
Well, really, why we have you here today is to talk about sort of an incident that happened way back in 2011, which seems like a long time ago, but really, I bet you the memories are fresh as today as we listen to this tape and be able to bring back sort of those thoughts. But sort of tell me about 2011 overall and sort of what happened.
Okay. So 2011, I was a fairly junior member. I was about less than 2.5 years on the job. At that time when this incident happened, I was training really hard. There was an upcoming ERT tryout, and I knew that there hadn't been a girl on the team. And while that wasn't the only reason I wanted to get on the team, it was highly motivating for me. I wanted to be on the team to get the best training available, and I knew that the guys on the team were operating at just a really high level of tactics and strategy and weapons handling. So I really wanted that because I sucked at it. Like at the academy, I had a lot of weaknesses in that area, and I figured that was the best way to expose myself to that training. So I was training really hard, and fortunately, a lot of the people I went to academy with, a lot of the friends that I made early on in my career were also going for that tryout. So we had a really neat training group. A few of them were on my shift. My partner was trying out for ERT as well, Dylan, and we were just being young junior cops, thinking the whole world is just our oyster, and working hard together and having a great time. I loved the job. I was a bit of a magnet, and I got myself into some pretty interesting calls early on, and I just loved it. I got addicted to the feeling of helping people and just all the opportunities. It was awesome. I was having a time of my life. I was 24 years old, and I just loved it. So it was the best. I got to work with Dylan, who was, just a really close friend, and we were training for ERT together, and it was the best. So do you want me to segue into what happened in 2011, or just the overall?
A little bit about, so you came from the academy. You always wanted to be a police officer?
From pretty early on, yeah. I got hired when I was 21. I was a reserve when I was 19, and I had a basketball coach that was a cop, and I just always thought, when my delusions of being a professional athlete were shattered, like many young people, I figured it was a good fit because, I was always raised to help other people. I grew up in a very Christian home where it was help your neighbor and be kind to people. And I loved excitement and fitness and team and stuff. So it seemed to be a great fit. So
you applied for Vic PD, apply for anywhere else?
No, I just wanted Vic
Wow.
PD. Yeah. I love Victoria. I love the city, and just really wanted to.
So we're not going to be able to sway over to Delta, I gather.
He did show me some neat things that you guys just got for training. So I was a little bit jealous, but no, I love Victoria.
You know what, Aaron? That's right, exactly. That 40 hours of vacation would have been good. That's exactly right. So
I didn't talk about that.
There's ulterior motive. I didn't hear that piece.
Exactly. So for any exempt employee that we bring over from another police agency, we provide that officer that introduced the exempt employee to us 40 hours of vacation.
Wow.
So it's not a bad deal. That's right.
Nice.
But we just like quality people as well. That's right. So you go to the police academy, you come out, and you're right. When you're a young officer, you don't have any of the troubles, any of the sort of the agendas, any of the big worries that you would have as you become a more senior officer. You're out there taking calls, doing your thing, having fun. You're with a good group of people who are all excited to be on the job as well. And typically, you have people that have a great attitude. They like to work hard, and there's all the social activities that come along with it as well. So you're out there having some fun, and in January of 2011, you end up going to a call. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so January 17th, 2011 was a Monday, and it started out like every other day. Me and the crew in the gym in the morning, pushing weights and training for this upcoming tryout that was months away. Did the workout. We had a really close shift. We always went for a team breakfast and just hit the pavement hard after that. So I worked in a partnership at that time with Dylan, and that morning he told me that he had something he had to take care of, some personal business. He'd be gone for a couple hours. No big deal. I'd worked by myself plenty before, and he would be gone for a few hours to go take care of that. So I changed my call sign to a one-man call sign. It was Alpha 37, and the morning kind of started with some excitement. There was a fire at one of the meth labs that was in a hotel. So I was actually on the news that morning trying to be a fireman and failing. But it was an exciting morning. And so from there, I went back to HQ to tidy up some paper. Thought with my partner gone, it'd be a good opportunity. It's a slow Monday morning so far. After that call, it had kind of died down a bit. So I'm going to go back, do some paper, and then I'll just pick him up in a few hours and get on with the day. So I get dispatched because I'm solo to what we would call very much a one-man call, a stale shoplifter at 7-Eleven. The person had allegedly stole a chocolate bar. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Like,
a completely nothing file.
Just about as boring as you can get. Right. So I probably rolled my eyes, but okay, still grateful for my job. And I'm like, okay, I will go investigate the crap out of this shoplifter and head down there. And the location of this 7-Eleven is right downtown. It's on Douglas Street. So on a Monday morning, it's just buzzing with people going to work and getting their coffees and, going about their day. So I get down there and greeted by the store clerk. Everything's normal. Go back to the back room where the surveillance machine is, and it's not working. So I'm actually in there for probably 15 minutes, which is in the radio broadcast why I say, just in case you're checking on me, I'm here. Nothing's happening, but my radio doesn't work in the back of this building. So I get the surveillance disc and go to head out. This particular store had these big double doors, these glass double doors, and I'm on my way out of the store, and a man is coming towards me, and I think he just wants to come in, so he's coming in my path. So I hold the door open for him, and I'm smiling at him, and I say, "There you go, sir." And my first indication that something wasn't quite right was when he looked at me like I was speaking Japanese. And you know how a dog looks at you and they're kind of it seems like they're trying to understand what you're saying. They kind of cock their head, tilt their head at you. He did that. And then he said, "Actually, no." And from the moment he said that, I see this big hooking motion from behind his back. And I see the sun, like it was like out of a movie. I see the sun shine off this blade that's coming in right for my head. I'm like, holy shit. So he stabs me. He says, "I'm going to kill you, bitch," were his exact words. He gets me in the neck. I put my hands up to block it, and I felt it. I felt something, but then I felt nothing. Just this wave of adrenaline come over me. And it was very clear in my mind that he was trying to kill me. So when he stabbed me, it was right from my head. The first stab wound went right underneath my ear. And so I threw my hands up to block. And of course, my gun is down on my right-hand side. My gun may as well have been in my locker. If I had lowered my hands to get my gun, which I'm thinking the whole time, how do I get my gun? I need my gun. I couldn't make distance because we were already in it. From the moment he approached me, we were in very close quarters. So I couldn't, if I'd lowered my hands to get my gun, I'd be dead right now. So I'm blocking, and then at that moment, I'm just like, I just need to get control of this guy. So fortunately at that time, due to my trying to get onto the team, I was in fairly good shape, and combined with the fact that he wasn't a big guy, and I had, God was looking out for me that day. I combined with some extraordinary luck, I was able to hip toss him to the ground, and I got a really good position. He stabbed me one more time on the way down to the ground. But when I hip tossed him onto the ground, his back hit the pavement quite hard. And that allowed me to get full mount on him. It also made it so when he fell backwards, his hands, including one he was holding the knife with, hit the pavement and sort of bounced. And that allowed me to grab his wrists and with everything I had, pin them against the ground. So now I've got control over this guy who is clearly trying to take my head off. For at that point, I have no idea. It was shocking, but didn't really have time to think about it. So from that point, he was saying things like, I hate the police and this and that. And I'm like, this is a stalemate. It was like out of a movie. I was pushing desperately against him on the pavement. He was pushing up at me. He still had the knife in his right hand. And at that point, I say to myself, I have to shoot him. I have to try for my gun again. So I look at the little place above his lip where I want to shoot him. And I say, I'm going to have to let go some control to go for my gun. And in the moment that I took my right hand off of his left arm to get my gun out, he throws his left hand arm over my back and starts trying to fish the knife to the hand that I've now given back to him. So I'm just, again, gun, may as well not have it on me. I just start hitting him as hard as I can. And I'm almost in a tunnel at this point. I don't know who's around me. I don't know what's going on. I'm just trying to stop this guy from killing me. And I am pulled out of that tunnel by a woman who is yelling at me, stop, you're hurting him. And I'm like, I kind of almost like I came to out of a dream. I'm like, are you kidding me? But it made me realize like there's other people around and kind of, like I said, pulled me out of this tunnel that I was in with him, hitting him. And so I look around, there's lots of people around. Like I said, it's downtown Victoria, it's very busy. And someone tells me, you're safe. He doesn't have the knife anymore. He doesn't have the knife. I'm like, where's the knife? It's down the sidewalk a few feet. So he doesn't have it anymore. So I kind of take a deep breath. I'm like, whew, okay. And then I realize I've got friendly people around me. I've got some civilians that are wanting to help and realize, I'm in a bad way here. So I have these two gentlemen say, how can we help? What do we need to do here? And I'm still on top of him. I'm still full mount on top of him. He was dejected. I looked at his face afterwards when I realized he didn't have the knife. And initially when he was attacking me, I testified that his eyes were so intense that I didn't even see his pupils. Like I swore he had none. Like it was so intense. And now he just looked like a sad, dejected person who failed in what they wanted to do. So I felt it was okay to kind of let people help me out, and I was grateful that they were there to help me, especially because that's when I realized that I was badly hurt. I instructed the one guy to help me flip him over. I said, this guy's under arrest and we need to put him in handcuffs. So flipped him over onto his stomach. I stayed sitting on top of him. I had my knee into his lower back area and still had control over him. But these guys came in and helped me. I went to get my handcuffs and I realized this hand it wouldn't open. It was just like an unbelievable hand cramp. I don't know what was going on. My hand wouldn't open. I looked down and that's when I saw I was bleeding. I had some cut defensive wounds on my hands. So I go to put my other hand to get my handcuffs out with my left hand, and that's when I'm seeing skeleton. I'm seeing all the bone in my thumb and flesh just hanging off of my bone. And this is all weird to me because I'm not feeling any pain. Like I've got these injuries that look pretty bad, but I don't feel anything. So my hands don't work. So I scooped them out with my hand in a fist. I handed them to this nice person who was willing to help me and told him how to put the handcuffs on. He puts the handcuffs on. I'm still sitting on top of this guy and I start to hear the cavalry coming and listening to the radio. That's why it's so hard, because I didn't know if that broadcast had got out. And I'm obviously fighting for my life at that point. And when you hear, any cop, you tell this too, when you hear those, we've all been in a position where we've needed help. We've been relieved that our team's coming, and, it's the best feeling in the world. So I hear those sirens coming over I say over the hill. It's a flat stretch, but it sounds so much more romantic when you say over the hill, because I couldn't see them. I could hear them. And, he's still lying underneath me. Shannon, who's the person you hear on the radio, who's now a dear friend of mine, is the first on scene. And I just remember her coming behind me and kind of putting me in a modified LNR. Like, she put her hand around my chest just to let me know, like, I'm here and I got you. And at that point, I was starting to get dizzy and feeling like I was blacking out. And the hardest part of that was, I don't think I'm dizzy and blacking out. I think I'm dying. I know I've been stabbed in the neck, and I'm feeling for the wound in my neck, and all I'm getting back is the meat that's hanging off my hand. So I think there's this catastrophic hole in my neck, and now I'm blacking out. I don't feel pain. Everyone says pain lets you know you're alive. I'm not feeling any, none. And I'm blacking out. So I just remember kind of sinking back into Shannon and, just being grateful that I arrested the guy that did this to me. He's still under my legs at this point. Then more people come on scene. My friend Corey, who I went to academy with, who was also training for ERT, I remember him running towards me with the first aid kit. And I remember his face when he's like, "Woof, I do not have anything in this kit that will fix that." So I remember his face so vividly. And then I remember my friends, my sergeant at the time, Wade Murray, and Chris Gilbert and Manny Gill coming on scene, but then not engaging. And afterwards I learned it was because Wade was, trying to tell them, like, this is our sister, she's on the ground, she's bleeding, but do not have emotion. Like, you need to take your emotions out. Lots of people are watching. We need to handle this guy with the same respect that we handle anyone we take into our custody with. So amazing heads up play by him, but I'm sitting there with this guy underneath my leg still, like, will you guys get this guy and put him in a police car? He's under arrest. So after that, I have no idea what happened. Next thing I know, we'll go back a bit. That I was trying to skip through. I feel like I've already been emotional too much in this, but when I was sitting there and I've got all my friends on scene, and I am leaning against Shannon, and I'm going into that all the black spots in your eyes, and I think I'm dying. Like, I'm sitting there just thinking, like, which one of these wonderful people, one of my teammates, is gonna have to go tell my mom that I died in the line of duty. I'm 24 years old, and this is it. And that was just, once you kind of get that feeling, I've never been able to get the depth of that feeling out of my body, thinking, thinking of that moment and who would have to deliver that message. It was just, it was an awful feeling. So I'm thinking that, and the next thing I know, I'm in an ambulance. Shannon's ripping off my clothes and gear, and she's like, "Lane, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." And I'm like exhausted, and I just want her to leave me alone. And I'm kind of in and out of whatever kind of semi-conscious state I'm in. And I remember telling her, like, don't patronize me. Like, I know I'm dying, which I can kind of laugh at now, but, and so she's taking all my stuff off. She's like, "No, your stab wounds to your neck are very like, you're going to be fine." And she's like, I'm not seeing anywhere else, like, just your hands. And so I sort of, I remember her ripping my vest off, and I all of a sudden feel this incredible wave of nausea. And I'm like, "Shannon, I'm going to barf. I'm going to puke. I need get out of the way or get me something." And so she gets me this cute little bedpan tray thing. I'm like, "Whoa." And I launch vomited to the back of the ambulance. That's probably an exaggeration, but that is the most aggressive puke I've ever had in my life.
Team breakfast gone.
Oh, gone. And I just remember, once I had finished puking, everything started to hurt so badly, and I have never been so happy in my life to feel pain. I felt everything, and I just smiled, and I believed her then that, my injuries were, less than ideal. I'd done some damage, but I was going to be okay. From there, I got taken to the hospital, and, that blue line, we pissed the nurses off so bad. We clogged the hallways with blue shirts. It was incredible. That camaraderie is the best feeling in the world. And, the chief came in at the time, and they were like, use this opportunity to ask him for warm jackets. We didn't have warm jackets. So he comes in and he's like, whatever you need. And I'm like, warm jackets. We need warm jackets. So,
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Did you get them?
Typical officer safety stuff.
We eventually did. It wasn't because of me. It was actually because of Shannon, because she was on the uniform committee, but, we had waited a long time to get a good jacket, and it was kind of a funny plug, but, so in the days and weeks and months that followed, this is obviously a big story. This doesn't happen. This guy, I'd never seen him before in my life. He'd set out to kill a police officer that day. I don't know why he picked me, but he did. The video shows afterwards he was stalking me up and down the aisles when I was sitting in the back waiting for the surveillance. So he had target locked on me, and it was just my fate that day. So days and weeks that followed, there was a ton of talking. Obviously, because this is an investigation, I'm not going to give any media statements. My department did all that for me. My injuries, I severed. So that's the scar. That's kind of where the meat was hanging off my hand. But these two tendons were severed, so I needed surgery. And, this hand, I ended up breaking my pinky finger and getting a bunch of stitches on this hand. But I needed to recover physically from my injuries. While that was happening, I was, I guess, trying to lay low and just kind of overwhelmed, like what had just happened and what this meant for me going forward. I was thinking, oh my gosh, their tryout, like how am I going to be able to get back in time for this? And just all these things going through my mind. At that time, I just ended a relationship, and I was kind of dealing with a lot of this on my own. And
what kind of support at home? Living at parents, living on your own?
I was on my own.
Yeah.
I had a little condo and a dog, and so great support. But at the time, and I'll get into this a little bit later, I didn't really allow a lot of it in.
Sure.
And early on, people were talking. It was the big story in the media. I couldn't go grocery shopping without seeing my face on the paper. I was in the news a ton. People were very kind and people were very unkind. And human beings, I don't know why we do this, but we tend to listen to the louder, but less, a much smaller audience of people that I do anyways, have critical things to say. So I remember when I was waiting for surgery, the person beside me, there's a curtain separating us, not a soundproof barrier. They said, oh, the girl that got stabbed is right beside us. Can you believe they let female police officers out on their own? And I was just like, what? And
it is 2011.
Well,
that's right.
And there was a lot of that. So the two guys who helped me ended up giving a media interview, and bless their hearts, like I'm so grateful to them for stepping in to help me, but the way they portrayed me was a bit of a damsel in distress. And the one gentleman said, he was on top of her, stabbing her, and I came along and I subdued him. And I was like, you have a different perspective. It shouldn't bother me that's what he's saying, but it does bother me paired with the comments about females being allowed out on their own and stuff. I'm like, what? So I had this, it's my fault that I allowed that in, but I was listening to things like that because I was junior, I was 24 years old, I'm a female who's a proud female. I think I'm strong, I want to do a good job and represent females well. And here I feel like the information that's out there is maybe embarrassing to other female police. Like they're going to have to listen to this and deal with it. And so I really kind of developed a bit of a chip on my shoulder in regards to being a capable female officer that goes out there on my own and does my job. And if you call 911 and you want help, I want you to feel confident when you get me, I'm going to be able to help you. And if I can't, I'll do whatever it takes to get help to you. So my ego is hurt.
And recognizing you want to go to the emergency response team, that there's an impact there, right? Because you don't want them thinking this as well.
100%.
Yes.
And so at that point, I'm like, there's got to be video. Like, they're gonna see that that's not what happened, and I didn't need, And it's funny now because it's like, oh my goodness, there's no shame in needing help. Like, you look at things now where civilians have stepped in to help people, and that's incredible. Like, I'm grateful that they helped me. This was purely an ego thing where I'm trying to be this capable young female police officer, and I feel like I've let people down. But
you're going to break the barrier. You're going to get into ERT.
Yeah,
right?
That's what the goal is. So I didn't pay attention to any of my mental health stuff. I was hell-bent on getting back, training, being the strongest person I could be. I competed. I drove my hand therapist crazy. I'm like, listen, the tryout's in a few months. You're either on board with me and you'll teach me how to do push-ups on my elbows, or get me someone else. And bless her, she was so lovely. At the hand therapy clinic, Lana, she put up with me and she helped me train. So within 2.5 months, I was back at work. And working back in patrol.
Yep.
Sometimes by myself.
Yep.
Like, they wanted to see, hey, if you're back, then you got to show that you're back and you can handle working by yourself.
Tell me what the department did to reintegrate you.
They didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah, agreed.
In fairness, they didn't know what to do with me.
I think we're just learning now. I think
are.
it's fair to say that. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Certainly we're learning as the Delta Police Department on what to do now. I think it's difficult.
It is. And they have paid attention to that since. And I can proudly say that we are focused on that now. We have a plan in place now. The road to mental readiness and a graduated return to work is in full swing. They have... unfortunately, that's how the world works. Something happens, you learn from it.
Crisis.
Yes.
You learn from crisis. Yes, that's when we learn from our errors.
Absolutely.
And we, all police departments, but certainly I can speak for the Delta Police Department, we make errors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're human.
Yeah.
So I'm proud to say we did learn from it, and we're on a pretty exciting path when it comes to mental health for members and occupational stress injuries. Yes. But I put my management through the ringer. So I'm back at work, and I'm still target locked on ERT. This opportunity to compete in, it's kind of a silly title, but the toughest competitor alive in New York comes up. I want to go. It's like a week before the ERT tryout, which in hindsight probably wasn't smart, but I thought it would be a great opportunity to really test my physical strength and my fitness, and give me some confidence going into the tryout. I wasn't expecting to win, and I ended up winning, which was fun. And that, of course, made the media, that was its own big medium thing. Oh my gosh, the stabbed officer goes and wins this award. And then I go and I do the ERT tryout, and I'm successful. And of course the media, oh my goodness. And everybody is talking about me like I'm this, she beat this guy who was stabbing her with her bare hands, and she was one toughest competitor alive, and she's the first girl on ERT. And I think I'm like, oh yeah, I'm finally, getting some of this, showing that, girls can be tough. And I was so hyper focused on being this tough person, which I just is so laughable right now in hindsight, because I was a fraud. I really was. I was doing all these wonderful things. I was on paper and out in the world just kicking ass and taking names, I guess you could say, but it was so not what was going on. It was such a small part of the picture for me. I probably had everyone quite well fooled for I'm sure there were people that, suspected I wasn't doing great. But I was just doing all these amazing things. So people kind of left me alone and thought, I guess she's okay.
Tell me what's happening on the personal side.
On the personal side, I am still single because at that time I'm having nightmares that are so bad that I'm breaking things. I'm waking up in my kitchen, not knowing how I got there. I had to take things off my bedside tables. I'm having these horrific nightmares and reliving it in ways that had different outcomes. And I can't cut food with a knife without feeling sick. Sometimes after I would have these nightmares, I would be physically sick. I couldn't go home without completely clearing my condo. Luckily, it was a tiny condo, but I had a routine. I cleared every closet. I had to look under every place a person could hide. I cleared it every time. Every time. I didn't feel like I could have a relationship. I'm a young girl who, before had an active dating life, and I feel like I need someone to sign a consent form if they're going to come into my house. How can I invite somebody here?
Are you seeing someone, like, as far as a psychologist or a psychiatrist?
I was, but in my own ignorance, I looked at that as a bit of a sign of weakness, so I wasn't fully immersing myself in the process, and I never gave myself a chance to really get the benefit of that because I'm tough. I don't need it. Was
it used as a tool to get back to work rather than as a tool to heal?
100%.
Okay.
Yep. Just sign the paper. Yeah. Get me back.
Agreed.
And so I'm doing all these things and I'm not doing well. I'm not sleeping. I'm running on fumes. At work, I'm triggered daily. I am going to these things. Every time I hold the door open for someone, I'm thinking how I can kill them before they kill me. That is every time I'm holding a door open. That's not normal.
How long in? What are we talking now? What kind of time frame?
From when it happened? Yes. As soon as I got back.
So this is right at 2.5 months, 3 months, yeah?
Right at 2.5 months. Because I'm in uniform again. I'm in the same, I have the same target.
And Victoria's not a huge city, right? So you're traveling the same distance. You're going to the same 7-Eleven. You're down on Douglas Street. Yeah.
Fortunately, my dispatchers were very kind to me and didn't dispatch me back to that. Like, there would be calls holding at the 7-Eleven and they wouldn't send me if I was clear. So I really appreciated that because it would have been very difficult for me. I still have a hard time going by it. And that's just trauma. That's just how your mind reacts to trauma. So I have all these things going on and I'm faking my way through. I'm letting people believe that I'm this, tough girl who's accomplished all these cool things. And I'm really struggling. So you can only fake it for so long. I was at a course. Brian Willis came and did a course with us on training mindset, and he just his training and his philosophies are just excellent. He's a gift to our profession, and he ran a course, and I'm in this course, and I'm sitting at the back, and he played a radio broadcast of an officer being, I think it was. I can't remember if it was stabbed or shot, and everything flooded back for me. The members were saying like, where are you? We're on our way, hang in there kind of thing. And it reminded me, it just brought everything back for me. And so I'm sitting at the back of this room. Grown police officer men are in this room with tears in their eyes. This is a very difficult radio broadcast to listen to regardless, but I was a mess. I had maybe it was a panic attack. I don't know. I couldn't breathe and I was uncontrollable crying. I just could not get a hold of myself. And unfortunately, there was a lot of witnesses. I couldn't get out of this room. I'm at the back and I am exposed. It's out there. I am not good. So.
In ERT at the time?
Yes.
Okay. So you're there. Okay.
I'm at ERT. I'm on ERT. And I'm exposed. So I leave that course. I go home. I'm embarrassed. People are checking on me. I'm just, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. CISM comes and says, you kind of made some people nervous today. I had a fantastic CISM person assigned to me. I love her to pieces. But I was hard on her, and she was delivering a message from work saying, you can't come to work until you see a doctor, and we need to know if you have a diagnosis or not, because what happened today wasn't normal. So now I'm just, if there was a more exacerbated word for embarrassed, then I would be that, because it was just like, I now can't come to work. Like, you've essentially taken my my badge from me until a doctor goes and signs off. And
by CISM, you mean the Critical Incident Stress Management
sorry,
team?
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay, yeah.
yeah. So I go to a doctor immediately. I'm like, I just need to get back to work. So the doctor is like, whew, yeah, you have PTSD. And at that point, I was totally ignorant on what PTSD was. My only experience with PTSD was when I was dispatched to someone whose PTSD had either made them feel suicidal or they were, angry and acting out. Like that was I was so ignorant to what it was. So to add to the embarrassment, I now had to take a note to my HR and say, well, I have PTSD.
Draw me the time frame on this. So January 2011, back to work, April 2011 approximately, into ERT, fall 2011.
Yep.
Right? And then this is what time?
This was in the following summer. So this was like a year and a half after.
It's a year and a half. Okay,
yeah.
Awesome. And you're still having the flashbacks, though, and you're still having the nightmares, you're still having the triggers.
I haven't addressed anything.
Okay.
I'm still a hot mess. Okay. So, and I also, on top of just not taking care of my mental health, I made a critical error in judgment. Trying to continue this facade of me being this tough person, I was presented with an opportunity to, at a fitness competition, to take some photographs for a clothing company that represented kind of a hero WOD in CrossFit is for a member who's gone down in the line of duty and stuff. So I kind of thought it jived with what cops were doing, and I was like, oh yeah, okay. And I asked my sergeant at the time, can I take pictures with a department firearm? Like it's kind of represents, I saw it as like a police thing, and I was asked to do this, and I got permission. And I took these photos, and they found out about that around the same time that I had, they realized I wasn't taking care of my mental health. And so they took those two things and they stripped me of my ERT pajamas. I was removed from the team. And that was it.
Yep.
That's the lowest I have ever felt in my life. I was mortified. You've now taken my uniform that says I'm on this team, the greatest accomplishment I've had in my life. Some of my teammates lost respect for me. They thought, what are you thinking? And I just didn't have that, the forethought to recognize that would be viewed as just a poor choice. I thought, I would look tough, and I was just trying to make people think I'm okay. And, what's that, sorry?
How mad are you?
Oh, mad is just not even.
Mad, sad?
I was at rock bottom. I couldn't imagine being any lower than that. I just couldn't. You've taken my, Aaron talks about ERT being taken away from him. Like that is when you've wanted something for as long as you can remember when you're a cop, and it gets taken from you in such an embarrassing way. And I've got PTSD and I haven't dealt with it. So I still have all these issues in my life. I still can't sleep. I'm still, having these things. I just couldn't imagine being in a lower place.
Still have your weapon?
Do I still have my
your weapon? Have they taken that away?
They didn't take it away. I wasn't asked to, once the doctor said, yeah, she has PTSD, but I'm going to sign off and say that she can work, because I had shown in a year and a half, I'd been to critical incidents, I'd been to knife calls, weapon calls, and I performed the way I was supposed to perform. And so because I could show that I am able to control my actions, even though I'm triggered, the doctor allowed me to continue working. However, I was removed from the team, so I didn't have my ERT toys. I didn't have my ERT uniform, the cool uniform that, people talk about, oh, you get your ERT pajamas. Well, I literally took when they told me that, I took my ERT uniform off and I put it on the desk. And I to this day haven't been so low. That feeling of just utter, what else? Feeling sorry for myself, like Aaron was saying, I was in a pool of pity.
Thoughts of suicide? I never in my mind was like, I want to harm myself. I thought, I had done enough harm to myself, and I would just, I
just couldn't ever do that. I'd been to enough suicides where I see the effect on family members, and I'm just like, I can't do that to my family. But I at that time, to be honest, and I don't think I've ever told anyone this in all the presentations I've done, I wouldn't have been sad if I got, if something happened and I lost a bit of will to put a foot in front of the other. I was really low. That's hard to admit out loud. But the great thing about being on the bottom is that there's nowhere to go but up. And so Brian Willis, who's just an amazing human being, reached out to me and he said, the other hard part of that was that he thought I was embarrassed girls before. Like some women in the department were saying, how could you do that? You basically stripped your uniform off that you worked so hard to get, and I'm embarrassed. Like that is the worst thing I could imagine. But anyways, moving on, because again, there's nowhere to go but up. I worked really hard. And
tell me about that. Tell me, so now you're at the bottom. What is the turning point that begins about, you've always been a hard worker, obviously, not only at work, but in fitness, in your, everything you do, right? Yep. So you're not afraid of work.
Nope. Right. I'm not. So, that's one thing I'll give my parents credit for. I have a work ethic that's, pretty up there. So Brian Willis reached out to me. He was very supportive when it happened. Because I was in his conference, like he knew. And he reached out to me and said, I've got some friends I'd like you to talk to. Have you really focused on kind of the peer-to-peer stuff? And I need to put you in touch with someone who's been through something similar to yours, who's been through a critical incident. Because, for me at that time, it was hard for me to sit across from a counselor or a therapist who hadn't walked the walk, who hadn't been the man in the arena, if you will. And I needed some credibility with who I was talking to in order for me to open up. And so Brian gave me that. He invited me to a conference in Calgary where I got to listen to some amazing speakers who had undergone some critical incidents. And it just made me feel like it was okay to feel all the things I was feeling. Because here are these amazing people who have been in these really stressful, worst case scenario situations, and here, look at them. They're not crumbling. They're presenting, and they're strong. And it was peer-to-peer that saved me ultimately. And while I hadn't had someone in my department that had gone through what I had gone through, I never thought to think bigger and to, I was talking to people. I got to have dinner with Bob Delaney, who ended up being a ref in the NBA, and there's a picture of Michael Jordan yelling at him. And he used to be a police officer who infiltrated the mafia and developed PTSD from that. I read his book, Surviving the Shadows, and it's so funny how the human mind works, where it's just like all we need sometimes is just to know we're not, you feel like shit. Well, that's okay. You're allowed to. You're human. It's the human condition, As humans, we're capable of phenomenally amazing things, but police officers, we have to remember, we're also susceptible to the human condition, and that includes stress injuries and all the thoughts and emotions that go along with the things that we deal with on our job. And
so this first conference the second conference, I guess, you go to see Brian Willis in Calgary, and you start talking with other peers who have gone through trauma and are relating their experiences, and you're finding that commonality that's amongst peers. How does that build into you eventually being able to manage some of the things you're feeling and actually feeling better and getting well?
So for me, a big part of what was stopping me from progressing was just never giving myself permission. And that sounds like such a simple concept, but I really got into mindfulness, and mindfulness really is that awareness of a thought, and is that a legitimate thought? Should that thought get some credibility, or is it just a thought and it's looping in your head and you need to address it and deal with it? And it's really a simple ideology, but it's very effective. So at that time, I realized I had no balance. I was obsessed with work when it happened. All my friends became work friends. I wasn't talking to a lot of people outside of work anymore. I was training all the time, shooting all the time. I was obsessed with work. I had no hobbies outside of the workplace, and I had no concept of mindfulness. I had no balance. And so that initial step of actually meeting people who I had a ton of respect for that had been down a similar road with PTSD and talking about it like, yeah, I got this. It is what it is. Just giving myself permission to have it and not be embarrassed by it. Educating myself on what it was, and that there's lots of people that have stress injuries, and it doesn't mean you're put out to pasture. You can function with a stress injury, and you can function quite well. So once I kind of just educated myself by talking to some more people about it, and then incorporating some things in my life that were not work related. I needed a hobby that was not, and I have some hilarious, I was telling Aaron when he picked me up that I have a reef tank and tropical reef, coral reef and tropical fish. And you should see this thing. It is out of control. I love it. I have a little farm. I have farm animals, and it's my happiness. I keep honeybees, and, I ride a motorcycle. I do things that are not cop related. If you saw me in a beekeeping suit, no one would ever think I was a police officer. I look like a major Dorcas. And, this reef tank just brings me hilarious amounts of joy and peace. So I do other things. I incorporate balance into my life, and I really focus on developing just genuine friendships. And, I think if you'd asked me back then if I created an image of what resiliency was when I was 24 and this happened, that image would be me climbing a mountain by myself with a pack on and no one around me. And that would be what I would tell you I believed resilience was, just putting one foot in front of the other, doing, grinding it out. And now my visual of what resilience is I still get to climb this mountain, and I'm still going to put one foot in front of the other. But, there's going to be a chain of people around me just below in case I fall. There's going to be a guy on belay in case I lose my footing. There's going to be scaffolding around me, my support system in case I get blown to one side. And there's going to be a coach at the top telling me, hey, you got this, you can do it. And so I think it's totally changed. And now I incorporate balance and support and peer-to-peer. I'm actually on the CISM team now. It's a huge passion of mine. Our department's doing some very cool things with mental health. We have guitar lessons. Again, that balance. Go do something else. Take your mind off of your job. Go play guitar for an hour. And they give us guitar lessons and running club, and there's yoga. And I've recently pitched an initiative to have a reef tank at the department.
Look at that.
A therapy animal.
That's right.
Go chill
Bees
out.
are coming too.
On the roof. Vancouver PD has bees on their roof. You better believe I'm going to be putting a beehive on the roof.
So you've absolutely been the easiest interview probably I've done of all the podcasts, because you tell your story, and obviously you've told it probably many times. So thank you for that. But I want to try and sort of pull together some things that people can take away. And one of the things that I think I've heard you say anyways, and I've certainly heard everyone else say as well, is there comes a point where there's a decision made that you are going to improve this, you're going to do better, you're going to look at it differently, you're going to take control. And I've heard you say that as well. What else would you add, would you say, were the things that really started you on that road back to where you needed to get to?
I think just a realistic expectation of what that means. I don't know if it's possible to heal from PTSD or a stress injury, cumulative stress, whatever stress injury you have, especially when you expect to keep going back and reintroducing yourself to things that are going to trigger you. So the biggest thing for me was just to allow myself to have a bad day, try not to let it spiral, have that mindfulness to say, this is a bad day. It is what it is. When you have a bad day, incorporate these measures into that to, be a little bit kinder to yourself. So if I'm having a bad day, maybe I won't let myself think about work that day. I'll say, you know what, I'm just gonna go put on my boots and my farm gear, and I'm gonna go be a farmer today. I'm not gonna think about work, or I'm gonna put my work down. I'm gonna go for a run. Like, allow yourself a bad day, and don't look at that bad day as a weakness. You're gonna have bad days. So being kind to yourself, recognize that for what it is, try to make it just a day. And if it's 2 days, okay, but now maybe we need to look at talking to someone, letting some of that support in. If it's 3 days, definitely reaching out and saying, these days are stringing together, I need some help. But really, it's just that kindness to yourself that this is what it is. You're not going to heal. You're going back and you're exposing, like I said, yourself to your triggers. So don't expect that. Don't get frustrated with yourself. You're not better.
Right.
Have that expectation.
So how long were you off work?
Which time?
So this would be the second time.
Not long. Because the doctor, like I said, I was taken from ERT, but I was back within 24 hours because I was able to prove to the doctor that I was handling basic calls with the appropriate response.
So after Brian Willis, that was just 24 hours, literally you were back at work. Boy, oh boy.
Yep. Hindsight, should have taken some time.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
So you really haven't missed a big period of time as a result of your PTSD? No. Good, bad, and different? What are your thoughts?
I would have done it differently now.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm 2.5 years in the job. Craig's podcast I listened to, he was the exact same. Get me back. I need to get back on the saddle.
Yes. Yeah. And that's actually how you feel good, is you want to get back in the saddle, but you don't deal with some of the other stuff.
That's right. Totally. Yeah. But otherwise, I was sitting at home just thinking about it. Like, I want to be back with my friends. I want to go. So. And
that was your social network as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, it's hard to say in hindsight I shouldn't have gone back, but I didn't have these things in place that would have made taking some time away a healthy thing. So it worked out for me. I'm really lucky because, it could have gone badly. But I was very mindful of the fact that, I didn't drink at all. I didn't take, I was prescribed medications for sleeping. I didn't take anything because I was just scared of, I don't want to touch anything that might make me feel, I was using...
It could mask anything, right?
They could mask anything, although I will chuckle because I did buy a Costco size of NyQuil because that would work. And I thought, it's NyQuil, so it's not an addictive thing. But I actually talked to a therapist and I told her I was drinking, not drinking, but taking NyQuil every night before bed. She's like, that is... you're addicted to stop using it. I'm like, but then I won't be able to sleep. She's like, well, then you're addicted to it. I'm like, I'm addicted to NyQuil.
I know.
Oh my gosh. So I stopped that because that scared, I want to be able to be mindful and work through my problems without any, kind of chemical assistance. And so I think that sort of, helped me to get back into a routine pretty quickly.
The other thing you mentioned, I don't want to miss, is the mindfulness. Tell me a little bit about that.
Man, what a simple concept that is so difficult. Like, it took me, people had introduced that concept to me fairly early on. Brian Willis preaches a lot of mindset, mind training, and mindfulness. And, I decided to just give it a go. And there's one, I had an app called 10% Happier, and there's one that's literally just, you're having a bad thought, flush it in the toilet. Think about that thought, flush it in the toilet. That's the whole thing. The guy's saying it for 3 minutes. And I'm like, seriously? This guy gets paid? This guy gets paid to say this? But I'm like, I've just broken the loop of what bad thoughts I was thinking because I focused on something else. So that's really what it is. It's, taking that negative loop in your head and either addressing it by, that meditation where you're focusing on it, you're aware of it, but it's you kind of categorize it into, do I need to have this loop in my head? Do I need to think about this right now? Or is it just a non-constructive thought that I can put over here for now? Yes. It's a really simple concept. But it works for me. When I have that loop playing in my head, I'll listen to a 5-minute podcast to get that to stop, and it works. All
right, I'm going to try and put a little bit of a timeline to this, Lane, and make sure that I sort of understand it. So we have January the 17th, where the event happens, and you're off for about 2.5 months getting your hands healed, basically, and getting in shape, ready for your training session for ERT that will come that fall. So you get back to work 2.5 months. You continue to work in patrol until the ERT training. ERT training and tryout, you then make it into ERT in the fall of 2011. And then it's in the spring that you're at a conference and you feel a flood of emotions that happen. And as a result, you end up coming back to your home department and they then say you're not going to be part of the ERT anymore. You only spend 24 hours off the street. Like you're not off the street for any significant period of time at all. And you're right back into patrol. And then what happens from there?
So when I was told that there were concerns surrounding how I was handling my mental health, as well as some decisions that one particular decision I had made with the pictures. They took the team. The team guys were still supportive, but I was removed as an active member of the team. I was back on the street within 24 hours in my old uniform. Not the one with the subdued flashers that you work so hard to get. That slick uniform that represents the team. I was back on the road in my regular uniform within 24 hours, and then obviously that's kind of when I went through sort of that rock bottom, but still working. And I worked really hard. I did what they asked me to do, and I started to build myself back up. And then it was a matter of a few months where I was able to prove that they didn't expect that I would have been recovered by then, but I could at least show that I was taking better care of myself, and this was a focus and a goal of mine to get myself to where they felt they could, trust me to handle my psychological care and my myself with, decisions that would affect the department, such as those pictures. And so the team, I was allowed back on the team within about I think it was about 3 months that I was off the team. So that was like I said, the worst kind of punishment I could ever fathom. But in the end, I was back on the team. I did a 6-year stint and I got blessed with some really cool opportunities, such as the explosives portfolio. And I retired after 6 years, and it's one of the highlights of my career. I learned a ton, and just really fortunate that I got to go back and experience that. So,
and only through your hard work. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So I've heard you say 3 things. Then I'm going to invite Aaron to be able to come up and ask any questions that he might have as well. But the 3 things I've heard you say is that there comes a point when we recognize it and you've got to make change, and you recognize that and you decide to make the conscious choice to actually make that change. The second thing is I've heard you say about the importance of peer-to-peer support and people with credibility who, have gone through similar things and can share experiences and share stories, not unlike what we're doing here with other people, and say that it's okay, right? These are some of the feelings you're going to get, and it's okay. Right. And there's ways to work through it. And finally, I'm intrigued on the mindfulness as well. So certainly that's something that's becoming very popular. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things, as we talk about, as even reintegration, right? We talk about organizations learning more about this and the importance of it, but mindfulness certainly is reaching out in a lot of areas. I've got to say before I turn it over to Aaron is that, you're incredibly brave. Thank you for coming on here. It's courageous and you've put yourself way out there. So I know that's uncomfortable, but you don't believe how much we appreciate it. And certainly I think other people will appreciate it as well. You're a role model for other people, and that's something to be very proud of. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well, Aaron, I see you're taking your notes that you made at the time on a brown piece of paper that was covering the table. So why don't you read me your notes at the time?
I came, as usual, I came prepared. Again, I just kind of echo what you just said. I really appreciate you making the trip over here and showing the courage to share your story. It was an amazing hour to kind of sit back and listen to this story. And again, we really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. A couple of things I kind of was funny, I guess, in just a weird kind of police way. Was the first thing was you're talking about when you're stabbed and you're feeling like you're dying, and your biggest concern is who's going to be delivering this message to your mother. Was just like, holy cow, like it's just, it really is. So that was one thing that really stood out to me. And it, again, with the peer-to-peer, the credibility, and I commend you for doing it. And I guess I wondered, you doing the peer-to-peer stuff and the CISM, do you feel that you get some healing out of that as well, or?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have received so much from other people. I'm not the most comfortable talking about, like, I'm sitting here sweating and I'm nervous. And so I'm not the most comfortable sharing my story, but everyone knows it. So I usually don't have to. I just sort of have a bit of that credibility, and that knowing that people can come to me because they know I've been through some stuff is hugely rewarding, and makes all of the stuff I went through, even the embarrassing stuff and the poor choices that I made, it makes it seem like it was for something. So that's nice.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. And I wrote this on my brown piece of paper.
I see that.
And I don't know how I was going to present this, but I mean, the situation is a shitty situation, but I'm almost, because I know you. I was on a 1-week pistol course with her. You're an amazing shooter. She was the fittest person on the course. She's one of the fittest person I've ever met. And I'm almost glad it was you on the day, because I don't think, I would like to think everyone would be able to survive it, but you survived it and you did an amazing job. And I think I'm glad you made it through, and I'm glad it wasn't somebody else that maybe wasn't as prepared as you were. So
thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
So we'll end off with something we like to give everyone that does the podcast for us, and we call it our commitment coin, and it comes from the Delta Police Department. And you've made a commitment sort of to our podcast and for being able to share your story and your story of healing and wellness and courage with us. So it is our pleasure to be able to give you our commitment coin from the Delta Police Department, and thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thank you so much. It's great. And thank you guys for what you're doing, because you're perpetuating that safe place for police to talk about their stuff. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. It's powerful.
These productions never come without a lot of work from everyone involved. A big shout out and thank you to Constable Aaron Hill, Melissa Granum, and Nikki Hewitt for producing and recording, and of course post-production done by Podfly. Next week on Bend, Don't Break.
And I remember thinking, okay, you've just get through the next hour, walk 5 minutes, and then you can die. Those are the conversations I had. Like, you had to dig so deep, and just to get through that time. I don't think if I didn't have that drive from training and policing and that background, I don't think I would have survived.
For more episodes, you can find us on iTunes and Google Play. If you have a story to tell, go to deltapolice.ca/podcast to submit your idea. Don't forget to subscribe to and rate our podcast. And if you want to connect, we're on all major social media platforms. Once again, thanks for tuning in.